Let's kick off with China and with trade, which clearly has a huge impact on U.S. equity markets. Do you feel like the sentiment from China over the summer has been moving towards a deal or away from a deal?
Well, I think it's pretty apparent that they're getting frustrated with the way that Donald Trump is approaching the trade war, which is he escalates and then he uses conciliatory rhetoric. And they're increasingly starting to realize that it's looking less and less likely that they're going to reach a comprehensive deal ahead of the 2020 elections, just because of all the U.S. domestic political drama that's left to go.
Yeah. Christopher, I mean, we can talk about U.S.-China trade and all the tension there, but there's so many other geopolitical scenarios that are currently playing out right now as well, whether it's Brexit, whether it's what's going on in Argentina, whether it's everything between Japan and South Korea. I mean, the list just goes on. How would, even if we were to get a China trade deal here, how would you assess all of these other potential risks and the impact they could have to global growth?
Well, I think just on China itself, I think we're spending far too much time looking at the ins and outs of a trade deal. Even if a deal is struck magically overnight, and it doesn't look likely right now, but even if a deal is struck, I think investors have to see through it and say, look, tariffs are part of our world right now, threats and counter threats, no matter who the next president is or if President Trump is reelected, we are dealing with a very bumpy relationship with China over the next year or the next 2 years. As you point out, though, we are headed for a whopper of month of October. It will start out with the 70th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, where things may heat up in Hong Kong. There will be perhaps a general election in the UK, or at least the deadline for Brexit is looming at the end of the month, and we'll be going into elections in Argentina at the end of the month. And so, you know, even if the Red Sox don't clinch the playoffs for the World Series, it's going to be a lot to think about and talk about.
Leon, does the situation in Hong Kong influence the likelihood of a U.S.-China trade deal?
Well, not directly, no, but there are obvious knock-on effects on one on the other. In particular, usually you see the U.S. pushing back more in terms of human rights. Now the Trump administration is taking a more hands-off approach, is letting the Chinese handle, Beijing handle the Hong Kong situation as it sees fit, because it is worried about throwing whatever little progress has been made with the trade war up in the air over an issue which Donald Trump just, quite frankly, is not that invested in.
Leon, also I wanted to quickly ask about Brexit, given you're there in London. Obviously, there's votes taking place this evening. If the government does lose today and tomorrow's vote and the Prime Minister sort of has his hands tied, as it were, on Brexit, how do you expect things to play out from there?
Well, there's a lot that is still up in the air, but Boris Johnson said that he was going to be gunning for October 14th elections should his hands be tied by Parliament. The difficulty with that is that the Labour, or its leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who does want an election, is very worried that if Parliament gets dissolved, then Boris Johnson can take the prerogative and move elections past November. And so he's going to need concrete assurances that the election will be held on October 14th or before Brexit timetable. But that really doesn't solve a lot of the issues. In fact, that could just trigger a whole new phase of uncertainty, because it's not going to be very clear what everybody is going to be running for. Some people are going to be voting in this election as if it is effectively a second referendum, when even it is not. Different parties are going to have different stakes that they are going to lay out. Labour Party is most likely going to run on a campaign for a second referendum and argue that it's going to give people the option of either Remain or a softer Brexit. Boris Johnson will try to use the same campaign to strengthen his mandate to go back and renegotiate with the EU and say that a better deal is still on offer, so long as they can prove that, as the British can prove, that they are willing to go the hard exit route. And then you have the Lib Dems and the Brexit Party, who are on the opposite sides. So there's plenty still up in the air.
Gents, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much, Chris and Leon.